Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today I'm looking at some Dynasty buys. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's go. So first one, Marvin Harrison Jr. You probably could have predicted that this was going to be on my list. He's been a bit disappointing, but part of that is because of the high expectations. I really think it's going to turn around for him. And we're going to look back at this as kind of a blip on, a very, very long and successful career. So far in 7 games, 220 catches, 300 yards, and 4 touchdowns, 43 targets, which is a lot, 2.9 catches and 42.9 yards per game. 20 catches is not very impressive. 43 targets is not bad. It's not at all what we wanted, though. Obviously, we wanted a wide receiver one right from the jump. Now, why do I have him as a dynasty buy? We cannot forget how elite Marvin Harrison Jr. was as a prospect. In 2022, 72 catches, 1,263 yards, 14 touchdowns, 97.2 yards per game. 2023, 67 catches, 1,211 yards, 14 touchdowns again, 109.9 yards per game. Can't talk today. Anyway, 2 straight years of elite numbers. There's no way that a player this good, drafted 4th overall, just became bad. I find that very, very hard to believe. Now, Harrison Jr. has 6 or more targets in every game outside of week 1 and week 6, where he left early with a concussion. And then in week 1, there were some issues integrating him into the game plan. And now, I'm not saying that he's been great, but I think those 2 games are really counting against him in people's minds big time. In the other 5 games, he has 19 catches, 296 yards, 4 touchdowns, which is not bad at all. It's not the superstar we wanted, but there wouldn't be a panic if those were the only 5 games. I think the concussion game, it's 1 out of 7. I mean, it's counting against him pretty severely. Now, how do we buy Marvin Harrison Jr.? Dynasty managers are very, very fickle. They're going to give up on an elite player prospect like Marvin Harrison Jr. after some bumps, maybe some bad luck in addition, missed open routes. There have been the concussion. There have been some issues. Kyler playing badly early in his career. So I have 3 trades lined up where you could acquire Marvin Harrison Jr. and I would do all of them. This first one I find very hard to believe. You could buy Marvin Harrison Jr. for Travis Etienne and Jordan Mason. I mean, this is not really happening in dynasty leagues, is it? I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is still a dynasty wide receiver 1. Travis Etienne is on the verge of losing his job if he hasn't already, and so would Jordan Mason with CMC coming back. I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. here easily. The next one, maybe you could buy him for Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, the real deal on the Dynasty Daddy trade database had actually a massive plus with Marvin Harrison Jr. I chose to write it this way because I think this is more realistic. Maybe you could get a plus with Marvin Harrison Jr. Why not try? Be aggressive. But I would still do this if push came to shove in a Dynasty league. I'd still rather have Marvin Harrison Jr. over Jahmyr Gibbs. And then this last one, I think this is actually realistic. You could get a 25 first with Marvin Harrison Jr. for Malik Neighbors. Yes. Okay. I like Neighbors more than Marvin Harrison Jr. That is true. Are they a first apart in value? Probably not. I would still rather have Marvin Harrison Jr. at a 25 first over Malik Neighbors. So there is an opportunity to buy Marvin Harrison Jr. at a depressed cost. And I think you should take it in your dynasty leagues. Next up, Sam LaPorta. Now, to me, LaPorta is one of the most strange players in 2024. I really don't get what's going on at this point. This year, so far, 14 catches, 224 yards, and a touchdown on 17 targets, 2.3 catches, and 37.3 yards a game. The yards don't look that bad, but he's had a couple of big plays, which are pushing that up a little. 17 targets is insane in 6 games for a player who was so good as a rookie. He has 1 catch in each of the last 2 games. He's basically not been a part of the offense, which again is crazy. So there are a lot of reasons why I have LaPorta as a dynasty buy. Let's look at what he did last year. So last year in 17 games, he played all of them, 86 catches, 889 yards, 10 touchdowns on 120 targets, 5.1 catches, and 52.3 yards a game. Look, I'm not saying he's going to duplicate the 10 touchdowns. That was probably not realistic, but it wasn't all touchdowns. He had 120 targets despite competing against strong receiving weapons. And we know that targets are earned. I find it very difficult to believe that a young tight end who was 22 in his rookie season, who earned 120 targets, is now suddenly bad. So why might he be having a down performance? Well, Here's, I think, the main reason that I actually don't hear being talked about a lot. LaPorta had a hamstring injury in the preseason and an ankle sprain in week 3. He played through both injuries. He hasn't missed a game yet, but he hasn't been as involved. In week 7, he finally played a 95% snap share, kind of getting back to his role from last year, his highest of the season. He's been on and off the field a little bit more than normal, blocking more than normal. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but I do think these injuries are limiting him. Now, as I said, LaPorta is just 23 years old. He turns 24 in January. It's just hard to believe that he just became bad. It's very difficult to believe. Feels like he's being limited by injuries. And we saw the same with Mark Andrews with his injuries, who suddenly woke up over the last 3 weeks and started playing better. And Andrews is 5.5 years older than LaPorta, or maybe 6.5 years older, 5.5 years. Much older than LaPorta. So I think that LaPorta is going to turn it around. I don't think his career is over. We also know that Jameson Williams is going to serve a 2-game PED suspension. Now, this is going to come at some point. He might appeal it. We're going to see, but the suspension is coming. Now, it's not going to solve everything, but I do think that we're going to see LaPorta more involved over those 2 games, potentially closing the buy window that you have now to buy him really, really low. And lastly, I know that the Lions like to run the ball, but this is an outlier. They have 192 carries compared to 178 passing attempts, making them one of the most run-heavy teams in the league on a team that has a lot of strong passing weapons. Yes, they like to run the ball. I think these numbers are an outlier, which has compared to LaPorta playing more as a blocker. In 2023, they had the same running backs, but they had 606 pass attempts to 500 carries, a far more normal ratio. And I think that's more what we can expect moving forward, rather than running more than passing. I think that's an outlier. They've lost Aiden Hutchinson on defense, and that also may cause them to be in more shootouts and see a little bit more passing attempts than we've seen lately. Now, how do you buy Sam LaPorta? I do think LaPorta is going to return to being a difference-making tight end at some point. The team drafted him to do so, and he did so as a rookie. One deal, you could buy Sam LaPorta for Tajay Spears and Romeo Doubs. Now, I don't hate those players, but these are not difference-making players. I would much rather have Sam LaPorta over these players. There are always ridiculous trades in the Dynasty Daddy trade database. Here's one. Apparently, Rachaad White comes with Sam LaPorta for David Njoku. Sam LaPorta is worth a lot more than David Njoku, let alone with Rachaad White. So see what you can do. And then this was after the injury. You could buy Sam LaPorta for Mike Evans. I would much rather have Sam LaPorta over Mike Evans. Sam LaPorta is 8 years younger than Mike Evans. And Mike Evans is now hurt. So I would easily take Sam LaPorta here. Take the opportunity to buy low on Sam LaPorta, someone who's already shown elite talent and is still just 23 years old. If you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. You get my rankings, access to the Discord, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos. I am doing some write-ups on the Discord. Patreon-only write-ups, so that should be exciting. And tiers begin at just $6 a month and include all of that. If you want to know more about the Patreon, check out both of my why you should join the Patreon videos on the channel. I probably have to cut another one of those promos. Might do that at some point soon. But there are 2 on the channel now. I really appreciate everyone who signed up and any new patrons who joined. I can't say this enough. Independent fantasy football content is really, really difficult. And it's hard. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, it is a capitalist society. And the way to show, you know, that you value something is with money. And I hate it. It sucks. I get it. It really sucks. But there's just no way. Can't give free QA advice and then charge for the same thing. We see how that makes no sense, right? That won't work. So it sucks, but I promise you won't regret joining. And, you know, I do talk about this on every single video. And yeah, I do a lot on the Patreon, and it is my main product. So I really hope you consider it. And yeah, especially if you want and like this YouTube channel and want it to continue, that is the way to make it continue. Now, with that said, let's jump into our next player. So our third and final buy today, Xavier Legette. He's kind of stuck in the Panthers' black hole, but he's quietly had an interesting rookie year. It's a big buying opportunity before a full breakout. And so far, 18 catches, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, 28 targets, 2.6 catches, and 25.3 yards a game. Fair to say these are not impressive numbers on their own, but it's important to remember that Legette is a rookie who really only started and finished 3 games so far. He was a bench player for the first 2 weeks with Bryce Young, remained that way in week 3 under Andy Dalton, but then Adam Thielen got hurt, opening the door for him to have 6 catches, 66 yards and a touchdown on 10 targets and 2 carries for 10 yards in week 4. So that was kind of his breakout. Unfortunately, then he left week 5 early with a shoulder injury. He did have a touchdown in week 6 as well. So he's had some flashes so far. Now, the Panthers, as we know, are a nightmare organization, which makes Legette a dynasty buy. The coaching staff and general manager that new this year spent a first-round pick on him. And we know there's so many things going on. Andy Dalton got in a car crash. It's probably going to prevent him from playing this week, which means Bryce Young will start, which means that the stink on the Panthers is only going to increase. Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen are both rumored trade candidates. So is Jonathan Mingo, but he barely matters. Panthers are 1-6 and maybe looking at their next quarterback at the top of the 2025 NFL draft. Johnson, Thielen, they're not a part of that plan. So Legette could develop into a key weapon for that new quarterback. Now, I don't think people realize that Legette has been good or should be valued highly. So here are 3 trades that I saw in the Dynasty Daddy trade database involving Legette. This first one, Legette and Tajay Spears for Khalil Shakir. Legette is worth a lot more than Khalil Shakir. Khalil Shakir, we know, is just a situational player. Legette, I think, has much more potential. And then Tajay Spears with it is a nice added plus. This one I thought was wild. Legette and a 25 first for DeAndre Swift. I would rather have Legette over Swift. So, yeah, smash accept here. And then this last one's probably the most realistic. Legette costs you a 25 second or more in this year's rookie draft. I think he's gained value, not lost it. So I would rather have Legette over a 25 second pretty easily. But overall, there are some opportunities to buy Legette. I might look into that. Now, we've got 2 pieces of NFL news today. First, DeAndre Hopkins traded to the Chiefs. The Titans received a 5th rounder that become a 4th for Hopkins. We know the Chiefs needed to make this move. They needed a receiver. Titans had no reason to keep Hopkins. So far, he hasn't done anything this year. 15 catches, 173 yards, touchdown, 21 targets, 2.5 catches, and 28.8 yards a game. Has not been healthy on the Titans. And unlike Devontae Adams, I think Hopkins had legitimate injuries. We saw that there were injuries. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. But last year, Hopkins was still pretty good. 75 catches, 1,057 yards, 7 touchdowns, 137 targets, and 4.4 catches and 62.2 yards a game. Don't know if he can get back to those numbers. The 2023 Titans, 2nd and 3rd receiving options were Chig Okonkwo and Tajay Spears. He's not going to have maybe this many targets on the Chiefs, but I do think he's going to have a higher catch percentage in the maybe Rashee Rice type role if he enters that role. Now, what do you do about this? For me, I would look to buy maybe Xavier Worthy. I don't think that Worthy's role is going to change much with Hopkins coming in. Again, Hopkins is coming in to play that possession Rashee Rice role, which was filled by Juju for that one game. Worthy saw 6 and 8 targets in the past 2 games. Couple trades to buy Xavier Worthy for 2 25 thirds. Yes, that was really in there. You never know. Goodbye, Xavier Worthy for Joe Mixon and Tank Bigsby. More realistic. If you're rebuilding or want to move toward 2025, this is a move. Mixon is an aging running back, and Bigsby isn't anything special. Next up, Alvin Kamara got a contract extension. He signed a 2-year extension through 2026 worth $24.5 million with $22 million guaranteed. Removes Kamara's dummy 2025 year, which was $25 million. That was never going to happen. $15.5 million signing bonus. Probably locks Kamara in for at least 2025, if not some of 2026 with that, guarantee. Of course, this means Kamara is not going to be traded. Still already 29. The dynasty value is mostly gone, but it's nice to have some certainty for the future, I guess. Kendre Miller is a backup at best. I bet the Saints bring in some competition for him after they let Jamal Williams go this offseason. So far, Kamara has 111 carries, 438 yards, 6 touchdowns, 3.9 yards carry, and 34 catches, 252 yards and a touchdown. Now, the 6 rushing touchdowns is more than he had in any of the last 3 years total. So he's had more rushing touchdowns this year already. He's remained between 3.7 and 4 yards per carry in every year since 2021. Also between 32 and 36 receiving yards per game every year since 2021. 4.9 receptions a game, helping his fantasy stats, but he's not been very efficient on those. I'm highly concerned about the overinflated touchdowns, poor efficiency on both the ground and the air. Of the older running backs, Kamara is the one I trust the least. Like, Derrick Henry is still very good for real life. Joe Mixon is still very good, actually, this year. Even David Montgomery still looks good. Those players are still playing well. Alvin Kamara is not playing well. He's been lucky with the touchdowns, which has not been the case since 2020 for him before this year. The last 3 years, not lucky with touchdowns. I'm not in on Kamara. So what are we doing? I'm selling Kamara. I'm not interested in Kamara. It's your final opportunity to get out from under him. A couple deals I saw. Sell Alvin Kamara for Tank Dell. The real deal had a plus with Tank Dell. That's probably unrealistic, but I would take Tank Dell straight up in Dynasty. And then you could sell Kamara for 2 seconds. That's probably realistic. That was in there. That's something I would absolutely do. Now, there's also a Patreon question, so we'll get into that, and then we'll close out the show. Are we done worrying about Breece Hall? I discussed this on here on 5 Takeaways, my last video, so go watch that one. But yes, I'm done being concerned with Breece Hall. Hall has played a workhorse role over the past 2 weeks under interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich, while Braylon Allen has essentially been benched. Hall is back to being a solid RB1 rest of season, although in Dynasty, I will say this. I am always fine selling any high-priced running back pretty much at any time. If you can get a Hall for someone like Breece Hall, Hall for Hall, should use that as a slogan. I'm always fine doing that. So I'm not saying I'm unwilling to sell him, but in terms of worrying about Breece Hall, yes, no longer concerned about Breece Hall. Now, if you like the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon right up there. Dynasty, Start Sit, Redraft, and more. And every sign up helps support my independent content like this YouTube channel. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.